In a quiet town called Maple Ridge, early Sunday mornings meant the local diner buzzed with regulars and weekend warriors. That particular morning was no different, except for one man who caught no one's real attention. Most folks barely glanced at him, maybe because he looked like just another old-timer. His name was Earl Mason, thin and stooped, with a mop of silver hair and a weathered face. Earl sat alone near the back window. His trousers barely hid a worn-out prosthetic leg that clicked softly against the linoleum floor. On his wrist was a faint, fading tattoo, a sword piercing through a ship's wheel, barely visible now, but once a symbol of a life few understood. Nearby, a table full of younger men, full of loud laughter and football stories, noticed Earl. They exchanged snickers and whispered, "That's not even real ink, just some scribble." One scoffed. Another added, "Why would a soldier not carry an ID card? Looks fake to me." Their words were careless, fueled by ignorance and the casual cruelty of youth. The waitress, a shy girl named Ellie who had just started working there, approached Earl hesitantly. Her cheeks were flushed as she said quietly, "Sir, there's been a complaint about you making people uneasy. Could you please take your meal outside?" Earl nodded without protest, slowly rising. His hands gripped a cane and the edge of the table as if holding onto his last shred of pride. As Earl moved past the table of mocking men, one of them called out loudly, "If you're a Navy diver, I'm a 4-star general." The laughter that followed wasn't warm or friendly. It was sharp and cold, cutting deeper than any wound. Earl didn't look back. A single tear escaped down his cheek as he stepped into the harsh sunlight, heading for the outdoor tables where only the lonely or those with dogs usually sat. The prosthetic leg's faint squeak was the only sound marking his passage, a quiet testament to battles fought far from public view. Ellie watched him from inside, her heart tightening. Maybe she was the first to really see him. She saw him carefully set down his breakfast, a small plate of eggs he'd saved for, and sit quietly, steadying his breath. Earl Mason was more than just an old man with a limp. Years ago, he had been part of an elite naval unit known as Phantom Squadron. Behind enemy lines, his role was vital, silent, dangerous, never talked about. In '72, a landmine took his leg on a covert mission along the rugged coastline of a far-off land. When he returned home, there was no fanfare, no medals, just a small auto shop in Maple Ridge where he fixed engines and taught local kids to handle tools with respect. The only things he kept from that time were the tattoo on his wrist and a faded letter from his commanding officer, yellowed with age, thanking him for his unwavering service. Every Veterans Day, Earl chose a different diner, not for a free meal, but to honor his closest friend, Mike Reynolds, who had died in his arms during that explosion. They had promised to share a burger once back home. Mike never made it, so Earl kept the promise for both of them, quietly remembering a friendship others forgot. While the town called him Old Earl, the neighbors unaware of the scars beneath his calm exterior, a new scene was about to unfold. Just as Earl settled outside, the diner's door swung open. In walked a young man with a sharp crew cut and confident stride. Lucas Trent, 28, a Navy SEAL home on leave. His eyes caught the faded tattoo, immediately freezing his step. "Excuse me, sir," Lucas called, voice steady but respectful. "Were you with Phantom Squadron?" Earl looked up, surprised. "Long time ago, yes." Without hesitation, Lucas snapped a military salute, flawless and precise. "You're Sergeant Mason, aren't you? The one they mentioned during our training sessions." The diner went silent. Forks hovered mid-air. Conversations halted, eyes fixed on the two men. Lucas's voice broke the quiet, firm and clear. "This restaurant has no right to ask you to leave. If anyone's uncomfortable, maybe they should step outside." An older woman rose to her feet and began clapping. Soon, others joined, some wiping tears, others standing in quiet respect. Earl squeezed Lucas's hand, voice caught in his throat. "Thank you, son. Just one person remembering, that's enough." But Lucas wasn't done. Turning to the crowd, he added, "This man led the rescue of 17 wounded soldiers during Operation Silent Tide. That tattoo was earned in fire and blood, not drawn with a pen." We stand because he helped write the rules we live by. The atmosphere shifted. Respect filled the gaps where laughter had once been. The manager approached, a bit sheepish now. Sir, there's been a mistake. Your meal is on us. Please come back anytime. Earl smiled faintly. No need for favors. I'm here for a friend. Lucas asked softly. May I join you? I'd be honored to hear your stories. They moved inside to a quiet table where the crowd watched silently as the men who mocked earlier slipped out unnoticed, leaving meals unfinished. Ellie came over with fresh coffee, her voice trembling. I'm sorry for before. My grandfather was in the war too. Never talked about it. Earl looked at her gently. What was his name? Mike Reynolds, she said softly. Never met him. Died before I was born. Earl's hand trembled as he pulled out a worn photo. Your grandfather promised me a burger here one day, he said quietly. For a moment, the past and present seemed to meet, pain easing into something like hope. A week later, the local paper featured a photo of Lucas saluting Earl. The headline read, The Quiet Soldier Who Silenced a Room. The story spread, and letters poured in. Children sent notes, teachers invited Earl to speak, and Lucas kept writing every month. The following spring, Maple Ridge held a ceremony honoring silent veterans. Earl spoke for the first time in public. I'm not a hero, he said simply. Just someone who tried to do the right thing. Lucas stood in the crowd, hand over his heart. Soon, Earl's shop became a gathering place for veterans to share stories and get repairs. Not just for cars, but for old wounds too. On Memorial Day, Earl spoke only of service and memory, never his own pain. The tattoo grew into a symbol. A plaque at City Hall read, Honor the Quiet Ones. On Earl's 85th birthday, Lucas returned with a group of SEALs to celebrate. Ellie brought her family, and Earl said proudly, I'm glad your grandfather's memory lives on. Maple Ridge renamed the street outside his shop to Silent Valor Lane, a tribute to all unseen heroes. When Earl passed 3 years later, hundreds gathered. They wore pins with a sword through a ship's wheel. Lucas and his team carried the coffin with full honors. A new prosthetic leg was gifted in Earl's name, a sign of a community awakened. His gravestone simply read, Silence Speaks. Service changes lives. The story of Earl Mason is more than just a tale of one man's courage and sacrifice. It's a mirror reflecting how society often overlooks the quiet struggles of its true heroes. Earl's journey reminds us that valor doesn't always come with fanfare or medals. Sometimes it's carried silently beneath the surface, in scars that don't show and memories no one else can bear. The faded tattoo on his wrist, once dismissed as meaningless, held a lifetime of service and unspoken pain. What's striking is the contrast between the ignorance Earl faced and the eventual recognition that blossomed through simple acts of respect and understanding. The shift from sneers to applause, from exclusion to inclusion, speaks volumes about how empathy can change a community. It took one young man's courage, Lucas Trent, to stand up and honor Earl's legacy, sparking a ripple effect that brought light to years of silent sacrifice. This moment wasn't just about a meal or a tattoo. It was about reclaiming dignity for those who give everything without asking for anything in return. Ellie's story adds another layer, showing how wounds pass down quietly through generations, waiting for someone to listen. The connection between past and present, the shared grief and hope, remind us that remembrance is a living thing. It lives in the stories told, in the friendships forged, in the streets renamed not just for one man, but for all who served in silence. Earl's life challenges us to rethink what respect really means. It isn't just a polite word or a moment of silence on a holiday. It's an ongoing commitment to see, hear, and value those who carry the weight of sacrifice every day. His story calls us to action, to honor not just the loud heroes, but the quiet ones whose service shapes our world in ways we often fail to notice. And in doing so, we find a deeper, truer sense of community and gratitude that can never be erased.